So this is how I change the oil on my 400. I'm gonna go over everything I do, kind of the steps I take, and explain what I do. All you really need is a 17mm socket or a crescent wrench and some new oil. But the tools that I'm gonna be using is gonna be a light, 17mm socket and a wrench. The key, obviously, to start it and warm it up, a new filter, a tool to take off that filter, some spare oil to flush, some new oil to replace, a rag, and some gloves, obviously a funnel, and then a little oil containment device or whatever you want to use. The first step would be to start the bike, warm up the engine. So the bike has been running for about 10 minutes now. The whole idea to heating up the engine is just to make everything easier on the engine. You want the oil to be as hot as you can without burning yourself, and carry as much heat through the oil change, not sit there for a long time, let everything cool down. That first startup on the new oil is where your engine is going to experience the most wear. So the more heat you can have in there, and a couple other tricks I'm going to show you, will prevent as much wear as you reasonably can. So the engine's warm now. I like to have it so I can have my hand on there for maybe about 7 seconds, and then it starts to get pretty hot. I think that's a good spot. Next thing you want to do is remove this little oil fill cap. You can crack it, but I like to just take it off all the way. This helps the oil flow. It'll help the drain a lot quicker. If you have that tight, then you might get vapor lock and you'll sit for a while trying to get that last bit of oil out. So now we're ready to drain the actual oil. The drain bolt is over here at the bottom of the engine. See there? I've already broken it with my 17mm hex, so now it's safe to just unscrew it. It's a little bit difficult just by myself, so bear with me here. This little washer, it's important not to lose or drop that. So I like to just kind of keep them together. You can feel when it lets go. So I'm pushing it in with my thumb and unscrewing it with my finger. So as soon as that last thread releases, I can just pop the thing out and then readjust my little tray to however the flow is. So here we've broken. The oil is pretty hot. That's why it's a good idea to wear gloves. So now we're draining. Here's a good shot of the dirty oil. It's already slowed down quite a bit. So here you can see the last bit of oil dripping out. Slowed down quite a bit, but there's still a ways to go. I'm making sure to keep my hand above my drain case here. Try your best not to spill oil all over the place. It's not a good practice. I'm going to move on to removing the oil filter next. The oil filter is a little bit difficult to show on camera, but I'm going to try to get in there from this angle. You can kind of see it. This isn't working well. You can see it kind of right there, that black housing there. That's the oil filter. If I were to go from underneath, and that's it right there. I'm going to be using my tool to get on that I have over here. And basically what you want to do is just take it off with the tool, just break the threads, and then just unscrew it with your hand. Make sure you catch all the oil in the oil catch. And then when you put the filter back on, there's a couple things I want to show you. Filling the oil filter by hand beforehand is a good practice. And then when you actually put it back on, just tighten it hand tight, no tighter than that. So now we're on the other side of the motorcycle, and you can see the oil flow rate there has dropped quite a bit. What I like to do is, this is some new oil that I've already opened. I like to just throw in a little bit extra just to help flush out that last bit. So I'm going to try to do that one-handed here. It's something you don't really have to do. I'm not really sure if it actually is that big of a benefit, but I mean, it's peace of mind and I like doing it. Another reason I do it is because I bought 10 gallons of this oil, this Honda GN4 conventional oil. I got it at a really good deal and I have a whole bunch of it, so I might as well use every bit of it. If you're using synthetic oil, then it may not be as good of an idea just because it's more expensive. But this is just a little something I like to do. Might as well empty this out. It just helps flush out that last little bit. You might as well, it doesn't hurt. So just for the sake of this video, I pulled off that bottom fairing. There's going to be two 4mm screws and a 5mm, all hexes, and then that little Christmas tree clamp in the front, just so that I can better show how to get to the oil filter. See if I can get a light. So now I'm going to be using this tool, which is basically just a wrap on and tighten, something like that. I'm going to need another hand to get it on there, and I'll show you how I pull it off and unscrew it. So this tool goes on something like this. You just wrap it on there and break it loose. So I've already done. Put that on the tag. And now it's a matter of unscrewing it. As you can see, oil's coming out. It would be beneficial to have a lower profile oil catch, because this is kind of a pain in the ass. But I like using this just because I can have a spot for everything. It has a little spot here. I like to put things there. Also, that drain plug is important not to lose. So now we're oiling. The oil is draining, and that's almost empty. I'm going to give it a little more flush and then move on to the next step. So here's another step that I like to do, is prepping the filter before placing it on the bike. And just for reference, I'm using these filters, these high flow HF303 RC. You can also use the HF303 without the RC, I think. Basically, this is just marketed as a racing filter. The only real difference that I can tell is that it has little nuts on the end for safety wiring. But other than that, they're virtually the same filter. And again, the oil that I'm using is this Honda GN4. This stuff's really good, it's really cheap, just regular conventional oil. My philosophy is to change more often versus spend a lot of money on oil and leave it in there. The best oil is clean oil. So as far as prepping goes, if I can get this open one-handed, I'm going to be pouring in 2 quarts, but what I like to do, I'll leave that like that, is just pre-fill the oil filter. Because when you start it up, that first cycle, you can fill it up about 3 times. When you start it up, it's going to be cycling through. So the more oil you can get in the oil filter, the better off it will be. So you'll have less time spent without any oil going to the engine. So I'll go ahead and fill it up again. Another good thing is to take a little bit of oil and rub it around this little seal. That'll give you a little better of a seal. I'll obviously wipe it down afterwards, make sure there's no leaks or drips. That's another little small thing that you can do just to have a more successful oil change. Again, it's a good practice just to try to be as clean as you can. I know it's kind of hard not to drip oil over here and there, but it's a good idea to just get good at that. So before I'll put this on, I'll make sure that the engine is full of oil and the drain plug is on. Otherwise, every drop is just going to leave the engine. So the next step would be to plug the engine with the drain plug and then begin filling the engine after this is on. So drain plug, oil filter, and then actually filling the oil through the oil port on the other side. So as you can see now, the drip is pretty slow. Same goes for the oil filter. This is why I like the pre-flushed, because you can see that oil coming out is essentially new oil. I wouldn't want to sit here and wait for every drop to actually leave the engine. I'm going to be plugging it now. And I can still feel that this bolt is hot, and the engine is pretty warm as well. I'm just going to be getting this finger tight and then get a wrench on it. After that, I'll install the new oil filter with the pre-fill, and then I'll fill from the oil port on the other side. So next up is installing the pre-filled oil filter. I took my finger and rimmed around that seal with a little bit of oil just to give it a more positive seal. I'm going to lose a little bit in the installation, but that's still nothing compared to an empty air filter, or oil filter I mean. It's kind of hard to get started. Don't cross thread this. Get a good feel for when it goes through. And now the actual tightening, you just want it to be hand tight. You don't want it to be, I would call that good. There's no need to get the strap on this and tighten it. That's just excessive. It's going to be a bad idea. The heat in itself will help expand and seal everything. The last thing I like to do is take a rag and just wipe over all that. Same with the drain bolt. Just get that nice and clean before I start filling with oil. That way I can tell if there's a catastrophic leak. So now is the actual filling the motorcycle with oil. The Ninja 400, I think it specifies 2.1 quarts for a full oil change. So what I will do is I'll just pour in 2 of these brand new quarts and then just give it a dab of a new third bottle. That should be good. You can always just go and actually check your little sight glass here. I haven't found that to be very reliable, just because there's lots of variables. You know, maybe your bike isn't straight up and down. Maybe the oil filter hasn't been filled yet. So generally I just like to measure the amount going in versus the indicated level on the sight glass. It's always a good idea to just let it sit, wait for a while, and then put some in. That'll give you a more accurate reading. But then again, if you put in 2 full quarts, then you're fine, for sure. So that concludes how I change my oil on my Ninja 400. I think that this is the 6th time that I've changed the oil, and it only has just over 2,500 miles on it, so it's pretty excessive. But I believe that if you do it often and correct, then you're not doing any damage. You're only going to be benefiting from that. And again, if you were to spend a few extra dollars and go with synthetic oil, fully synthetic oil, then they would last a lot longer. Even this conventional oil does last a lot longer than the increments that I change it at. But again, maybe you learned a thing or two, and I'd enjoy someone commenting on what they learned or what I can improve or how they do it differently. Thanks for watching.